Incredible Nanny exposed, solves $300 million crisis in moments, leaving the Millionaire CEO HEA. Jessica breathed in the scent of fresh grass as she navigated the bustling streets of her suburb. Bouncing toddlers giggled around her, their laughter mixing with the sounds of distant car horns and chirping birds. At 32, she was the steady backbone of her family. She wore the title of nanny with pride. Each child under her care was a testament to her dedication, even if her own kids often sacrificed their desires for the pantry's bare shelves. Today felt different. Whispers floated in the air, whispers about Mark, her employer, a towering figure in the corporate world who seemed to float above the financial concerns of regular folks like her. Rumors of bankruptcy curled around the affluent neighborhood like a thick fog, threatening to shatter the glossy image of wealth. Upstairs, the tension was palpable. Mark sat at his sleek desk, papers scattered around him like fallen leaves in autumn. He had built an empire, but looming deficiencies rattled him. "Jessica," he called, frustration lacing his voice. It was never just about the money for him, it was about family. As she walked in, a wave of empathy washed over her. Behind his tailored suit lay a man grappling with failure. "Can you help?" he asked, a shadow of vulnerability flashing across his face. "Maybe you can see something I can't." His disbelief was evident. Could a nanny understand the intricate dance of finances? "Of course," Jessica replied, her heart racing. This was her chance to show that she wasn't simply the help. Memories of her upbringing flooded her mind, lessons about grit, hard work, and community. The thought of her own kids played with those certainties. They mattered most. "Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let us continue." Jessica put her head down, diving into the pile of documents. Hours blurred as late afternoon light waned. The numbers pinched at her brain, yet she stayed determined. Then, like a lightning bolt, she found it: corruption. A morass of deceit buried in figures, which, if revealed, would save the company but threaten everyone's position, including her own. She sat back, a sense of resolve taking root. This wasn't only about Mark's financial lifeline but the fabric of their lives, the ideal family he sought to preserve. She felt the weight of the world on her shoulders, the ache of scrapping by with her own children pushed starkly against the backdrop of affluence. Did they even see her struggle? As confusion nested in Mark's family, Jessica's spirit soared. Could they really dismiss her now? She knew the fight ahead wouldn't be easy. Standing at the brink of a revelation, she began to sense the delicate intertwining of trust, understanding, and responsibility. With the hope of salvaging Mark's family and her own dread of being underestimated, she understood one thing clearly: they had to work together or risk losing everything. But just as she planned her next move, her past murmured, waiting for the perfect moment to intertwine with their imminent crisis. The stage was set. Would she rise to claim her worth or remain locked away, an unseen pillar in a world haunted by class divides? Jessica's fingers trembled as she mulled over the figures spread across Mark's desk. Information flew through her mind like a rapid-fire montage. She had always been the keeper of secrets, the crux of trust between a chaotic household and the outside world. But this secret felt bigger, rawer, more personal. The stakes had never been higher. As sunset draped the room in warm hues, Jessica dug deeper, pushing her doubts aside. What if revealing this corruption meant destroying the lives of those around her? She could feel the tug-of-war in her heart. On one side was the instinct to protect those she loved, including her own children who looked up to her for strength. On the other loomed the chance to save a family that had entrusted her with so much. Mark's voice snapped her back to reality. "Jessica, can you find anything?" His brow was furrowed, but there was a desperate hope in his eyes. I can't afford to lose everything, not just the business, but the life we've built. She crossed her arms tightly, fighting the urge to break down. I can't promise anything, but I think I might know what's wrong, she admitted. Would this be the moment she changed everything? Mark leaned in closer, his intensity contagious. What do you mean? You've seen something. Yes, she said, resolute now. But if I dig further, if I act on it, it could hurt people. Your team, your family. The weight of her words hung heavy in the air. Exactly, Jessica. It impacts everything. My wife, the kids. We can't just sit here and wait. We can't stand by while others are destroyed, she finished, her voice a whisper. He inhaled sharply. Yes. But if we can root it out, if we can prove the foundation is shoddy, we could rebuild. Hope flared briefly in her chest. Could they really save everything? She recalled the nights her children had gone to bed hungry, the pained looks on their faces. Her situation had never been glamorous, but it had taught her the value of family and unity. Would she risk everything for another family? Deep down, she knew the answer. They deserved a chance, just like hers. I'll do it, she breathed, the weight of her decision settling in. But I need your support. The truth won't be easy to unearth. It's settled, then. We work together, Mark said, his face lighting up with a flicker of determination. They started brainstorming strategies, the plan emerging amid laughter and nervous energy. Hours raced by as they annotated documents like two seasoned detectives. With each stroke of the pen, tension ebbed from Jessica. It felt like they were edging closer to something profound. Years spent wrapping bandages on scraped knees now evolved into solving corporate crises. Just as they began piecing together the puzzle, an unexpected knock jolted them upright. The door swung open, and there stood Mark's wife, Emily, her eyes wide with worry. What is going on here? I've been hearing some strange things. Jessica's heart sank. This was an unforeseen barrier, a potential leak in their plan. Would Emily support them, or would her presence put another nail in the coffin of their fleeting hope? Jessica swallowed hard, feeling clammy under the scrutiny. She glanced at Mark, whose face clouded with mixed emotions. As uncertainty loomed, Jessica realized they truly were at a crossroads. Now, all their plans hung in the balance, fragile and unsteady. Could the truth bring them together, or would the storm of secrets tear them apart? Jessica's breath caught as she met Emily's gaze. The worry etched on Emily's face mirrored the turmoil in her own heart. Had they suddenly thrust themselves into a web of potential betrayal? Emily, we were just Mark started, fumbling for words. He rose, but his motion felt too abrupt, like something was about to break. What is going on? Emily pressed, folding her arms as if to shield herself from their impending confession. I've seen you both working late, the whispers in the hallway. Are you keeping something from me? Jessica opened her mouth, but no words came out. She felt the walls closing in, that heavy weight of her decision. She had just chosen to step into a whirlwind, and now, the storm was right there in the doorway. Can we speak in private? Mark finally managed to say. There was a steely resolve in his eyes that Jessica admired, but fear flared in her gut. What would Emily think? Would she understand? Emily crossed her arms tighter, foot tapping impatiently. Why should I? Because whatever is happening here can impact our family. Mark's voice turned earnest, pleading. Please, trust me. Silence fell heavily as Emily stared at him, gauging his sincerity. It felt like an eternity until she sighed, relenting. Fine. Let us talk in the living room. As they followed her, Jessica's heart raced. She couldn't ignore the knots in her stomach. Mark had called her a protector, but now she felt more like a time bomb, ready to spill their hidden truths. Once they settled in the living room, Jessica faced Emily, trying to gauge how to begin. Look, I've found some discrepancies in the company's finances, accounting irregularities that point to deeper issues. Emily stiffened. What do you mean deeper issues? It's hard to explain fully without the documents. Jessica trailed off as Emily's brows furrowed. It was just a matter of time before she dropped the bomb, revealing how corruption began to take shape in their lives. Let her speak, Mark urged gently, eyes dark with concern. She's trying to help. If there is something wrong, we need to know. We have to think about the kids, Jessica interjected, the urgency creeping into her voice. If this goes south, it could affect everything. Your home, your family, all of it. Emily tilted her head, contemplation replacing her previous apprehension. So, you're saying this could collapse our lives? Yes, Jessica nodded, intensity in her eyes. But it also means we could stop it. Expose the rot that's sinking the ship before it drags everyone under. Emily's breath hitched, the realization dawning on her. And you think we can just do that? If we work together, Mark added, gripping Emily's hand, a sign of solidarity. We'll find the truth, as hurtful as it might be. Emily's gaze shifted from Mark to Jessica, weighing the situation. So we're willing to risk it all to save a business? With hope, Jessica whispered, surprising herself at the emotion she felt in that moment. Because the alternative is living under a lie. Emily hesitated, the tension in the room rippling like a live wire. Then, almost imperceptibly, she sighed, shoulders slumping slightly. What do you need from me? Jessica felt relief wash over her, gratitude mixed with hope bubbling inside. Your insight. If there's anything that seems off, anything you might have sensed, it could help us put the pieces together. As the three of them began brainstorming, a sense of unity filled the room. They weren't out of the woods yet, but they were on the cusp of something monumental. Just as laughter bubbled over, Mark's phone buzzed loudly against the table, a reminder that danger still lurked. Emily's eyes narrowed. Who is that? Mark looked at the screen, blood draining from his face. It's the board. They want an emergency meeting. Now. The gravity of the situation slammed into Jessica like icy water. The clock was ticking. Would they manage to uncover the truth before it was too late? Or would the shadows swallow them whole? Mark's heart raced as he held his phone, the room suddenly feeling too small. Emily's eyes darted from him to Jessica, a mixture of fear and anger contorting her features. This isn't good, she whispered. What are they going to do? Whatever it is, we need to be ready, Jessica replied, adrenaline pumping through her veins. They could sense something's off. If they're meeting now, it means they're desperate. Mark rubbed the back of his neck, pacing the living room like a caged animal. We have to gather our thoughts. What are we going to tell them? We can't just walk in there unprepared. Let us outline everything we've found. If they're hiding something, there must be a way to flush it out, Jessica suggested, her mind racing with potential strategies. Flush it out? Emily echoed incredulously. We're not the FBI. We can't just go in there guns blazing. Mark stopped at her outburst, the tension spilling over in waves. No one is expecting us to do anything extreme, he reassured her, his tone soothing. But we have to approach this calmly. We need to ask the right questions. If we stick together, Emily, we can find the truth. Emily took a deep breath, her bravado wavering. I get that, but if we confront them directly, it could backfire. We don't even know who to trust or who might be involved. Exactly, Jessica nodded. This isn't just about the numbers. It's about the integrity of the entire company. We need to figure out who has the most to lose. Mark tapped his fingers on the table, lost in thought. Let us compile a list of anyone who could be in on this, people who had access to the books. Each name might reveal connections we weren't even aware of. The three of them quickly jotted down names, their pens moving furiously as the clock continued to tick. Jessica felt a rush of urgency, knowing each passing moment brought them closer to a potentially catastrophic meeting. Suddenly, Mark's phone buzzed again. They all froze as he read the screen, dread creeping into his expression. "They want us there in 30 minutes. 30 minutes?" Emily exclaimed. Panic flashed in her eyes. "We're not prepared for that. We'll have to be." "It's now or never," Mark said, his voice firm but trying to maintain an air of calm. "Stick to the facts, and let us not let them intimidate us." Jessica met their gazes, a fierce determination settling in. "We've come too far to back down now. Together, we can face whatever they throw at us." Looking at the hastily scrawled names on the paper, a thought pricked Jessica's mind. What if we bring up their discrepancies subtly? Make them think we're just looking for clarity. Emily nodded, biting her lip. If we play it right, it just might work. We need to be careful, though. What if they catch on to our intentions? We'll have to watch our backs, Mark agreed, firing up with newfound purpose. But we cannot let fear control us. We can do this. What's the worst they can do? Fire us? Emily said, her eyes narrowing. The tension was thick, but there was also a flicker of hope in her voice. With little time left, they quickly organized their thoughts. As the front door loomed before them, each footstep down the hall seemed heavier than the last. The boardroom wasn't just a room, it was a battleground. When Emily asked, "Do we have each other's backs?" Jessica felt a surge of solidarity wash over her. She nodded as her worries faded, replaced with the electrifying charge of purpose. But just before they turned the last corner, Mark whispered, "Whatever happens, remember we're not alone in this." Jessica's heart pounded as they approached the heavy door, an ominous weight pressing down on them. What secrets lay on the other side? Would they unravel the truth, or would they become yet another casualty of corporate greed? Before she could steel herself further, the door swung open, revealing a dimly lit room filled with stern faces, all waiting for them. And then, before they could fully step inside, a voice called out from across the room, a familiar voice that sent a chill down Jessica's spine. Well, look who decided to join us." The tension crackled in the air, and as Jessica stared into those unfriendly eyes, she couldn't shake the feeling that they were on the brink of something far bigger than any of them anticipated. Jessica's breath hitched in her throat as she scanned the room. The familiarity of the voice belonged to Greg, their former colleague and now a pivotal figure in the company's inner workings. His smug smile twisted into a smirk, and just like that, any sense of composure they had built came crumbling down. "Nice of you to finally show up. We were starting to wonder if you'd back out," he said, his tone dripping with condescension. Mark stepped forward, defiance igniting in his eyes. "We wouldn't miss this for the world, Greg." "Right," Greg replied, leaning back in his chair, folding his arms. The air felt thick, electric with tension. "Well, let us get on with it, shall we? We all know why we're here." Emily exchanged glances with Jessica, a mix of anxiety and resolve battling within them. This was their moment. "Actually," Jessica interjected, her voice steady, "we wanted to discuss some discrepancies in the financial reports." "It seems discrepancies?" Greg interrupted, his brow furrowing, but not with concern, it was more of a challenge. "Perhaps if you had spent more time focusing on work and less time gossiping, you would have noticed everything is perfectly in line." Mark shifted uncomfortably. It was clear Greg wasn't going to let them in easily. "There are patterns, unusual transactions patterns." Greg laughed sharply. "You think you can run a forensic audit from your little corner desk? Let me remind you, this is a multi-million-dollar company. We manage complexity, not to mention a few sensible risks. And if there is something you don't understand, it probably isn't meant for you to know." The words hung in the air like a heavy fog, but Jessica wasn't going to back down. "You might be right about complexity, but integrity matters more. If you're hiding something." The whole boardroom seemed to hold its breath as Greg leaned forward, eyes narrowing. Who's hiding anything? Make no mistake, Jessica, going down this path can lead to trouble. You three are treading on thin ice. Emily shivered slightly at that threat. She stepped closer, her voice low but steady. We have documents, emails, evidence that suggest some unsettling practices. And we're not afraid to share them. Mark nodded in support. We want to handle this the right way. We care about the company just as much as you do. But you need to start being honest with us. Greg's expression darkened, a flicker of panic in his eyes for just a moment before he regained composure. Honest? Is that what you assume you will get from people in power? As silence enveloped them, a pulse of fear shot through Jessica's veins, yet she held her ground, feeling solidarity in the determined glances shared among them. Greg glanced around the room, gauging the reactions of the others present, all icy and uninterested. Let's say I do respond. What's in it for me? A clear conscience. Emily shot back, her voice quaking just a bit but infused with passion. Good luck, he replied dismissively, now rising from his seat. You didn't really think this would end well, did you? Mark moved closer, a hint of desperation creeping into his voice. No, Greg. This is just the beginning. We're not going away. You can't brush us off like this. Is that so? Greg leaned in, the challenge clear. Then let us see just how far you're willing to go. I hope your little crusade doesn't break you. Their hearts raced as Greg motioned to another board member at the far end. This isn't just about your job, you know. What you're facing is bigger than the three of you. Tread lightly. Jessica's thoughts turned chaotic. They had prepared for this confrontation, but how could they combat something so deeply entrenched? What if they were over their heads? As the meeting dragged on, Jessica's mind whirled. What were they truly up against? Would they face down this giant of deception? Or would this be the end of their fight, leaving them powerless and exposed? Just as she contemplated, Emily leaned closer to whisper in her ear, we can't give up. We have to be smarter. We need a plan, something they won't see coming. The weight of anticipation stalled in the air. Could they possibly find an angle that would take Greg off guard? As Jessica pondered on the possibilities, something clicked in her mind. And just like that, she felt a spark of hope flicker again. This wasn't over yet, but as Greg shot a final menacing glance, it dawned on her, this battle, indeed, was only just beginning, and the risks were about to grow even bigger. What would they uncover next? Jessica sat at her desk long after the meeting ended, the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. Her fingers hovered above the keyboard, but the words just wouldn't come. She replayed Greg's condescending smirk, the way he toyed with their resolve like a cat with a mouse. The anger was still fresh, bubbling underneath her skin. Did you see how smug he was? Mark's voice broke through her thoughts, sharp and raw with frustration. He slammed his palm on the table, causing papers to flutter. This isn't just about discrepancies. It feels personal. Yeah, it does, Jessica replied, her voice barely above a whisper. He's scared. We rattled him. Emily stood by the window, watching the city below. The streets snaked with dark lines of evening traffic, and the distant noise felt like another world, a world far removed from their current struggle. We need to get our hands on those documents, Jessica. The evidence we have is crucial. What if we hack into their system? Mark suggested, his brow furrowing with concern and a hint of excitement. No, Jessica said firmly. That's risky. We need something we can prove without crossing any lines. We have to play it smart, like Emily said. We need Greg to underestimate us. Emily turned away from the window, determination lighting up her eyes. What about reaching out to someone in IT? Maybe we can find information on the transactions without stepping into the crosshairs of legal. Jessica felt a rush of relief. That could work. If they're not on Greg's side, they might help us. We just need to find the right person. I'll dig around, Mark said, leaning in closer. But we need to act fast before Greg puts up barriers. I overheard him talking about a major meeting next week. If we can't expose him before then, we might lose our chance. In that moment, energy sparked between them. They felt like a team again. The thrill of a challenge flickered inside, lighting up the darkness that had creeped in. Okay, let us split up our tasks, Jessica suggested, her heart racing with newfound hope. Emily, you reach out to IT. Mark, you keep pulling documentation from accounting. I'll gather everything we have so far and prepare our talking points for when we confront Greg again. Just as they rallied around their new plan, the door swung open. Tasha, the office manager, stepped in, looking worried. Guys? You need to see this. The three exchanged curious glances as they followed Tasha into the small break room. A few members of staff were gathered around the television, the news blaring. Jessica gasped as the headline rolled across the screen, "Major Scandal Erupts in Local Company Allegations of Fraudulent Financial Practices." What? Mark exclaimed, his eyes wide. Tasha bit her lip. They're saying there's an investigation underway, and they are focusing on our company. As they watched the segment unfold, Jessica's heart raced for a different reason now. Fear gnawed at her. What if Greg finds a way to pin this on us? This could blow up in our faces. But Emily suddenly leaned closer to the screen, her eyes narrowing. Wait. Look. They're mentioning names. This could be our leverage. We might be able to use this to our advantage. Mark chewed on his lip, glancing at Jessica. Or it could hasten Greg's plan to cover his tracks. We need to move now. Because if he is scrambling to protect himself, it won't be long before he realizes we're the only threat left standing. Just as Jessica opened her mouth to respond, the screen flashed a photo of Greg, his face distorted with fury. The word "suspected orchestrator" loomed across the screen, casting shadows in the break room. Jessica felt a shiver of motivation shift through her. Perhaps this was the spark they needed to take the fight to Greg, to strip away his power. Gathering every ounce of strength, she knew they were no longer just small players in this drama, they were ready to become the protagonists. But as the reality of their situation settled in, Jessica couldn't shake the feeling that Greg wouldn't take their uprising lightly. The stakes were higher than ever, and if they stumbled, they risked losing everything. What might Greg unleash next? Jessica stood frozen in the break room, feeling as if the walls were closing in around her. The news anchor's voice faded into a dull roar, drowning out everything but the rapid thrumming of her heart. She exchanged quick glances with Mark and Emily, who were just as wide-eyed as she was. The gravity of the situation pressed down on them, it was overwhelming yet invigorating. Did they just say our names? Mark whispered, disbelief etched in every line of his face. The whole company is on the chopping block, Emily said, swallowing hard. If they find evidence of wrongdoing, we're not just collateral damage will be blamed. A part of Jessica wanted to buckle under the pressure, but the fiery determination that had sparked inside her wouldn't allow it. We need to gather our evidence fast, she said, gripping the edge of the table. We can't wait for Greg to pull the rug out from under us. Right, Mark nodded, as urgency etched deeper into his features. If we can somehow control the narrative before the investigation starts in full swing, maybe we can save ourselves. What if Emily began, an idea flickering in her eyes? What if we leak information to the press? Something that puts Greg's actions front and center. We need to turn the scrutiny away from us. No, Jessica cut in, shaking her head. That could come boomeranging back. We need to be smart. If it backfires, it would ruin everything we've fought for. Tasha stood quietly by the door, watching them. I didn't mean to interrupt. But if you need support, I think I might know someone in HR who isn't fond of Greg. She might want to help. Jessica felt a surge of gratitude toward Tasha. If you could reach out, that'd be great. We need all the allies we can find. As Tasha left, Jessica's mind raced. The stakes were higher than before. It wasn't just about their jobs anymore, it could spiral into a fight for their reputations and futures. She felt the clock ticking, each second placing them further behind. The group moved back to their desks, energy buzzing around them like static. Jessica gathered her notes, compiling everything she could remember from the previous meetings and all the quietly whispered conversations about Greg. They needed an airtight case. Listen, she said as she typed, focused on the screen. If we can dissect every bit of the financials he's hiding and tie those discrepancies back to him, we can create leverage. Something no one can ignore. Mark leaned over, excitement creeping back into his voice. I'll get those documents from accounting. They're bound to have something, especially since he's been acting so paranoid. Emily, contact your IT person ASAP, Jessica reminded. We need to ensure whoever connects with us is on our side, and not just feeding into Greg's narrative. As they worked furiously, Jessica couldn't shake the doubt slight whispering in the back of her mind, was any of this enough? At that chaotic moment, another spike of energy surged in the room when the door swung open again. Greg stepped in, his face a storm cloud of anger, and all that undeniable authority he held was suddenly more menacing than ever. What is going on in here? He demanded, his eyes scanning the room like a predator. Jessica's stomach nodded. They were on borrowed time, and she could feel the danger radiating from him. The thrill of rebellion coursed through her veins, but so did the fear. Greg, Jessica said, finding her voice despite the clamoring in her heart. We need to talk about these allegations. What could he possibly say to defuse this? And how much longer would they be able to keep the upper hand? Jessica felt an unexpected surge of defiance. It was time to confront the monster lurking behind that smug facade. With every fiber of her being, she braced herself for the storm that was about to unleash. Would he try to deflect blame, or would he come after them, all of them? The air was thick with tension as she waited for his response, her heart beating harder than it ever had. And somewhere deep inside her, she wondered, would this confrontation mark their downfall or ignite a revolution? Jessica stood her ground, the weight of Greg's gaze pinning her in place. She could see the flicker of anger crossing his features, the way his jaw tightened with barely restrained fury. The moment felt electric, charged with a mix of fear and determination. Allegations? Greg spat, eyebrows drawing together. You're the ones who should be worried about cleanup. The board's not going to be forgiving, and neither will I. Jessica felt her chest constrict. We're not here to deflect blame, Greg. We're here to discuss what's happening in this company. It's time for accountability. Accountability? Mark echoed, his voice rising with indignation. You're the one who should be worried. You've manipulated numbers and bullied employees. We have everything we need to prove it. Greg's expression darkened, morphing into something cold and calculating. You think you can take me down? You're all expendable. This isn't a Hollywood movie where the good guys win. Maybe not, Jessica shot back, heart racing. But this isn't a movie. This is real life, and what you're doing will catch up to you. We're bringing the truth to light, one way or another. For a split second, Jessica thought she saw a flicker of uncertainty in his eyes. But it vanished just as quickly, replaced by a mask of fury. I'll make sure you regret this, all of you. You think you can survive the fallout? Cold sweat broke out across Jessica's forehead. Anger battled with the reality of their situation, and she felt herself falter. But she couldn't show weakness, she wouldn't let him see her fear. Let us see how far you can push it, she challenged, her voice steadier than she felt. Something shifted in the room. Mark and Emily moved closer, their presence reinforcing her resolve. They were in this together. They wouldn't let fear dictate their actions. They were no longer shadows waiting to be crushed, they were fighters. Greg took a step closer, his eyes glinting with malice. You don't know what you're getting into. I can ruin you. But even as he spoke, Jessica felt a spark of something else ignite within her. It was the realization that, for once, they were the ones holding the cards. The board might be listening to Greg's lies, but they had evidence, and they had each other. Before Greg could respond, Tasha re-entered. She looked determined, her phone in hand. I just spoke with Sarah from HR. She's willing to help us. She has information on Greg's shady practices. Greg's face twisted further, and Jessica noticed the panic just under the surface of his bravado. Shut it down, Tasha. You don't want to get tangled in this mess, he warned, a desperate edge creeping into his voice. Tasha met his gaze without flinching. Too late for that. This is about integrity now, Greg. It's time for the truth. Jessica felt a rush of hope. Maybe they weren't just outmatched after all. With Sarah's help, they had a stronger chance. Let us put him in the spotlight, Emily whispered, barely able to contain her excitement. With Sarah's information and what we already have, we can expose him before he has a chance to act. Greg took a step back, frustration boiling over. You'll regret this, he hissed, his facade cracking. As he spun on his heel and stormed out of the room, Jessica and her team stood in stunned silence for a moment. They had made a stand, and it felt monumental, a glimmer of victory in a supposedly lost battle. Can we really do this? Mark asked, his voice trembling but with a hint of enthusiasm. Can we take him down? We have to try, Jessica replied, steeling herself. If they could just gather enough evidence, they might actually succeed. But deep down, she knew one thing. This was just the beginning of a struggle, and there were no guarantees of success. The real fight lay ahead, and they'd need to be smarter and faster than ever before. Next steps, she said, shaking off the lingering fear. Dive into everything we have. No one can make us disappear. It's time for the truth to come out. And as they all rallied together, determined to forge ahead, Jessica couldn't shake the feeling that a storm was brewing. Their confrontation with Greg had ignited a fire, but how long before it became a wildfire threatening to consume them all? Jessica gathered her team around the conference table, their eyes wide with a combination of fear and excitement. The tension that hung in the air felt palpable, like a vinyl record waiting to spin. She could sense the urgency of the situation. They were in a race against time, and each tick of the clock reverberated with potential consequences. We can't waste any more time, she said, her voice echoing in the now silent room. We need to meet with Sarah and go through everything she's willing to share. The sooner we act, the better. Emily nodded eagerly, her brows knitting together in determination. I'll call her right now. If she really has critical information, we need to gather it quickly. Mark shuffled his papers, his fingers fidgeting. What if Greg tries to get to her first? He'll know we're onto him. He's not going to sit back and wait. Jessica felt her heart race. Mark's words sank into her, expanding the urgency within her chest. We'll be careful. We have to move in stealth mode. If Greg suspects anything, he'll go on the offensive. Tasha leaned forward, her expression intense. What about the files we've already collected? They contain his abuse of power. We could take those to the board as a secondary layer of support. Right. Let us compile everything, Jessica said, enthusiasm blossoming amidst the fear. The more layers we add to our case, the harder it will be for him to deflect. The group was alive with purpose as they distributed tasks, their spirits reignited by a shared goal. Jessica took a deep breath, every pulse of adrenaline in her veins sparking hope. Maybe they could really do this. Maybe they could finally take a stand against Greg. As they rallied, the reality of their situation didn't fade. The risks were greater than anything they had faced before. Greg was ruthless, and this fight was far from over. He had a reputation for retaliating against those who crossed him, and a part of Jessica feared what he might do next. Once the calls were made and plans solidified, they met again. Mark looked more collected, his earlier doubt replaced with resolve. What if we write a draft of what we want to present to the board? His ideas flowed, and they began shaping a presentation that could expose Greg. But as they scribbled notes, Jessica felt a creeping sense of dread. Do you think they'll listen? I mean, really listen? Emily took her hand, squeezing it tightly. We're not just talking about trust anymore, Jess. This is about principles that our truth is more potent than their lies. Her eyes sparkled with belief, and Jessica felt the warmth blossoming inside her again. It was contagious. Maybe they didn't have everything figured out, but they had hope, and they had each other. As the hours slipped by, an unsettling quiet fell over the office. The buzz of the outside world faded into the background, leaving only the determined shuffling of papers and whispered strategies. Jessica stole a glance at the clock. Time was slipping away. A frantic knock cut through the silence. Tasha shot to the door, swinging it open. Sarah stood there, anxiety flickering in her eyes. I heard what happened. Greg's already on the warpath. What do you need from me? Everything, Jessica replied, heart racing. We need to know the depth of his deception. We need it all. As Sarah stepped inside, the door closed behind her like a lock clicking into place. Jessica couldn't shake the feeling of being trapped in an escalating storm. Would they have enough to break through Greg's defenses before he retaliated hard? The tension in the room thickened as Sarah laid out what she knew, details that sent shivers down Jessica's spine. This wasn't just about business, it was personal. For the first time, tears threatened to spill down Jessica's cheeks, not from fear but from a determination blooming within her, raw and fierce. The fire had ignited, and she wouldn't let it go out. As the details flowed, Jessica knew they were on the brink of a monumental showdown. But what would be the price of their fight? She drew a breath, staring into Sarah's eyes. Knowing they were all risking everything. Greg's a storm, she said, her voice steely. And we need to be the lightning that strikes. And as they moved from sharing revelations to preparing their plan, Jessica couldn't shake the feeling that this moment could either make or break them all. What awaited them beyond the next door? Would they emerge victorious, or would Greg's retaliation bring everything crashing down around them? The air felt electric as Jessica, Mark, Emily, Tasha, and Sarah gathered in the conference room, the walls echoing their determination. The flickering fluorescent lights above highlighted the anxious yet hopeful faces. They needed a game plan, and they had precious little time. Okay, let us focus on the evidence. Every discrepancy, every shady email, every late-night meeting, this will be our ammunition, Jessica declared, her voice steady despite the whirlwind of fear swirling inside her. Sarah, what specifics do you have? Mark pressed, leaning forward, his brow furrowed. We need pieces that tie directly to Greg. Sarah inhaled deeply, her eyes darting to the floor as if diving into the memories. I've noticed certain expenses that don't match up. It all points back to a few key transactions that, if brought to light, could bring Greg down. He's been using company funds for personal gain. It's hidden, but the trail is there. Perfect. We can present that to the board, Emily exclaimed, her excitement palpable. If the board sees clear evidence, they'll have no choice but to act. With renewed energy, they worked collaboratively, each adding pieces of the puzzle to the board on the wall. Jessica felt a swelling tide of hope in her chest. They were no longer just trying to save their jobs, they were fighting for integrity, for the truth, and for future generations who deserved better. Minutes turned into hours, and as they rehearsed their presentation, Jessica felt confidence swell within her. Door slams echoed down the hallway, a chaotic reminder that time was against them. They had to act and fast. Just as they put the finishing touches on their presentation, Jessica's phone buzzed violently on the table. All eyes shot to the screen, where a message from Tasha's colleague in IT popped up. Urgent. Greg's been deleting files. He knows you're on to him. The room froze. What? Mark gasped, his face paling. We have to move, Jessica urged, adrenaline surging. If he's purging evidence, we need to get our hands on what we can before it's gone. The clock ticked ominously, a countdown to their destiny. As they gathered their files to present at the board meeting, uncertainty gripped Jessica's heart. But then Tasha reached over, squeezing her hand. You got this, Jess. We all do. They huddled together, exchanging silent vows of loyalty. No matter the outcome, they would stand united. The collective strength burnished their resolve. When they walked into the boardroom, the atmosphere was thick with tension. Greg sat at the head of the long table, a self-satisfied smirk plastered on his face. His presence sent a chill down Jessica's spine, but she pushed through it, finding her voice. Thank you for gathering, everyone, she began, standing tall. We have urgent evidence to present regarding financial discrepancies that could threaten this entire company. Greg interjected instantly, arrogance dripping from his words. Evidence? From you? I doubt you've got anything substantial. Emily and Mark exchanged fierce glances. Jessica forged ahead, undeterred. We've documented unauthorized transactions that tie back to personal expenditures, and we have testimonies. She held her breath, waiting for the reaction. Greg's expression faltered for a fleeting second, shadowing a flicker of fear. But it quickly vanished, replaced by anger. You think they'll believe you? You're in over your heads. That's not how this works, Tasha stepped in, her voice steady. We are bringing this to light because it's the right thing to do. You can't force us back into the shadows this time. The tension in the room escalated. Greg rose, rage emanating from him like heat off asphalt. You think this will protect you? You are all expendable, and I can have you out of here in a heartbeat. Jessica felt a flicker of doubt creeping in, but she locked eyes with her team. They were in it together. The truth is powerful, Greg. You underestimate us. The board members shifted uncomfortably. Murmurs flooded the space. Jessica could see fear and curiosity mingling in their expressions. These documents are the evidence that can prove something is deeply wrong. We need you to take this seriously. Just as she began to lay out the evidence, Greg slammed his palms on the table, signaling for silence. You've crossed a line. You think you won't face consequences? I warn you, your careers are at stake. Maybe, Emily countered boldly. But integrity matters more than your empty threats. This is bigger than us. We stand for every employee you've intimidated. The shift in the energy of the room was palpable. Many in the boardroom were visibly disturbed, their allegiance wavering. Jessica pressed on, laying out their annotated findings and supporting documentation. Each detail added layers to their case, and as she spoke, she felt the tide turning in their favor. When she finished, there was a heavy silence. Greg's expression twisted into something menacing, a dark cloud of power fracturing around him. Before he could retaliate, one of the board members spoke up, Greg, we need to investigate these claims. If what they say is true, we could have serious legal implications to navigate. Finally, the board had turned. Greg's anger simmered just under the surface, the realization of defeat beginning to worm its way in. The very foundation of his power was starting to crumble. You'll regret this, he hissed, opting for one last grasp at control. But the fangs of fear had already lost their grip. Jessica glanced at her team, emotions swirling. They had done it. The truth was out, and it was beautiful, like the first day of spring after a long winter. In the weeks that followed, the company faced a seismic shift. Investigations uncovered layers of corruption and deception, leading to significant changes at the company. Jessica, Mark, Emily, Tasha, and Sarah stood proud, together bearing witness to the dawn of a new era. As word spread, many others in the company began speaking up, inspired by the bravery of the group who dared to challenge the darkness. Life wouldn't be perfect, but they had forged a family through the turmoil. And in that crowded conference room, facing down one of the biggest corporate figures, Jessica felt hurt transform into hope, into resilience, and above all, powerful purpose. They, the so-called little players, had managed to stand tall against a giant, and emerge unscathed. As they stepped into the future, hand in hand, Jessica knew one thing for sure: it was possible to change lives, not just her own but all those who felt marginalized. Empowered and unyielding, she resolved to keep fighting for a community rooted in integrity, kindness, and unwavering belief in oneself. We all need that kind of transformation in our lives. So, don't wait even one more second. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Comment below your reactions and feelings about this inspiring ending. And share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformation. You need to show your support.